So what really happens when a billion-dollar deal in the crypto world just collapses? For years, the go-to answer was, let the crowd decide. But as it turns out, the so-called wisdom of the crowd might just be a terrible, terrible way to deliver actual justice. Today, we are diving deep into a brand new blueprint that's designed to fix all of that. First things first, let's just wrap our heads around the scale we're talking about here. The market for tokenized securities, you can think of them as digital stocks, bonds, that kind of thing, it's projected to rocket up to nearly $27 billion in the next decade. And look, when you've got that much value floating around in a new digital space, good faith and handshakes just don't cut it. You need a rock-solid legal framework. And that really is the central question, isn't it? What happens when a smart contract doesn't do what it's supposed to do? Or a huge digital asset deal completely falls apart? The crypto world tried to solve this with its own kind of courts, but, well, there was a huge, huge problem hiding in plain sight. Yeah, the early solution was this thing called crowdsourced dispute resolution, which was used by platforms like Claros. The idea was simple: let the community vote. But a really groundbreaking critique from Professor Yuping Yang was about to expose a fatal flaw in that entire approach. This one question, this single question right here, basically challenged the entire legal foundation these platforms were built on. See, Professor Yang wasn't just asking for a simple yes or no. He was arguing that what they were doing wasn't actually arbitration at all. And if he was right, that meant their decisions might not be legally enforceable, anywhere in the real world. A huge problem. So what was this fatal flaw? Well, it comes down to a really fascinating concept from game theory called a Schelling point. In these crypto courts, jurors weren't rewarded for being right. They were rewarded for voting with the majority. Just imagine a trivia game where you don't win for knowing the correct answer. You win for guessing what the most popular answer will be. That's a fun game night for sure, but it is an absolutely terrible model for justice. So Yang's whole critique really boils down to three critical points. First, independence is totally compromised. Jurors are financially pushed to just go with the flow. Second, there are no reasoned decisions. You just get a final vote tally, no explanation, which violates pretty much every legal standard on the planet. And all of this leads to the knockout punch. The whole system simply fails the legal test for arbitration, which basically makes its rulings worthless under international law. Now, what's really interesting is that Professor Yang himself suggested a fix. He said, hey, just ask the crowd to explain their votes. But the authors of the paper we're digging into today argue that this totally misses the point. The core problem isn't the lack of an explanation, it's the crowd itself. The financial incentive to just guess what everyone else will say is still there, and that corrupts the whole process from the start. You just can't fix a broken game by adding a comment box at the end. Okay, so if the crowd is the problem, what's the solution? This is where a totally new system comes into the picture. It's called the Post-Yang Expert Arbitration Protocol, or PEEP for short. And it's designed from the ground up to just abandon that flawed crowd model completely. PEEP is built on four really powerful principles. Instead of letting anyone with a handful of crypto tokens act as a juror, it uses cryptographically verified experts. It then mathematically enforces that they all work independently, so there's no chance for groupthink. It also demands a proper structured legal analysis, not just a thumbs up or thumbs down vote. And maybe most importantly, it's designed to work with existing international law, not try to ignore it. All right, the theory sounds great, right? But does it actually work in practice? Well, this is where the data gets wow. The researchers ran a bunch of controlled simulations to put PEM NEDAP head-to-head against both traditional courts and the old crypto systems. And the results, well, they kind of speak for themselves. I mean, just look at this table. Traditional arbitration is insanely expensive. We're talking a median of $143,000. And it's painfully slow, taking almost 2 years. The crowd-based system, Keros, yeah, it's cheap and fast, but look at that appeal rate, over 17%. That means people clearly don't trust the outcomes. But then you have PEOP, sitting right in this incredible sweet spot. It's way, way cheaper and faster than the old way, but with an appeal rate that's even lower than the traditional courts. And to really put that cost difference in perspective, we're not just talking about a small improvement here. The simulations are suggesting a potential cost reduction of 90 to 95% compared to traditional arbitration. That isn't just an improvement, that's a complete game changer. And the time savings are just as dramatic. I mean, instead of waiting nearly 2 years to get a decision, disputes could get resolved in just over a month. For any business that operates in the crazy, fast-paced digital economy, the difference between waiting years versus waiting weeks, well, that's everything. But you know, what's maybe most compelling is that PEEP isn't just about being cheaper or faster. The data suggests it might actually be better. A lower appeal rate tells you that the people involved see the decisions as being higher quality, more fair, more legitimate. So it's not just about getting fast justice, it's about getting quality justice, delivered efficiently.
Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, this is a really fascinating academic paper, but that's all it is. But the researchers have actually laid out a very practical, real-world plan to take PEAP from a paper to a global standard for digital justice.
And the roadmap is really clear and it's super ambitious. It kicks off by engaging with the United Nations key body for international trade law, which is called UNCTRL. From there, the goal is to develop a model law for this new kind of digital arbitration, and then finally create global guidelines so countries all over the world can adopt it. This is literally how you build a new international standard from the ground up. Of course, and this is super important, we have to be really clear here. All of this incredible performance data comes from controlled simulations. Turning this into a real-world system is still going to require years of validation, testing, and getting regulatory approval. Being transparent about where we are in the process is absolutely key. So, after all that, why does this really matter to you? Well, if you're an investor, it means a safer, more trustworthy market for digital assets. Knowing that there's a reliable way to solve problems reduces risk and builds a ton of confidence. And if you're running a business, it means a justice system that can actually operate at the speed of digital commerce, one that's faster, cheaper, and way more predictable. And that leaves us with one last massive question. We started this whole journey by looking at a pretty niche problem in the crypto world. But could these principles, verified expertise, and forced independence be the blueprint for justice across the entire digital economy? Maybe, just maybe, we're not just looking at a better crypto court. Maybe we're looking at the future of law itself.